Good evening, and welcome to another Mowing After Dark here on the College Football Mafia Network, 2 days after House. I feel like we might have to do like AC or ADBC. We've got to have After House and Before House. But it's 2 days after House. It's 1 day before the NIL Go collective thing. And it's probably about 12 hours before the first lawsuit gets filed in court on the East Coast. I think there are some courts that open at 8 a.m. on the East Coast. So I would expect probably tomorrow morning, if you're checking the Twitter sphere on your coffee break, you're probably going to see the first of many lawsuits brought up to challenge House. But I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight on this Sunday evening. I am, of course, your host, Moen, of the College Football Mafia Network, as well as my co-host, Rock and Rant of CFB Express on YouTube. How are you doing tonight, Rock?
I'm doing good, short a few tacos today, but other than that, I'm good. We could talk a lot about the outhouse. I mean, what I'm calling after house is outhouse after it's all over, because we're still in a little bit of a shit show.
Absolutely. Hold on a second. I'm trying to let my thing run through its ad on the soundboard app now. Now I've got.
I was gonna
ads on the
say
soundboard
that
app.
was an interesting, that was very ethereal. Is that the way you kind of chill out to all of the lawsuits in college football?
Just like anything else, they got to put ads in everything now.
Yeah. My question on your thing about tomorrow morning is not that there will be lawsuits. Like, technically,
3 tips
which
for Christians
topic?
back to their relationship with God. Number 1, pray every day.
Stop that.
Prayer is not just a
I don't know if I'm gonna get the soundboard up tonight or not.
I mean,
it just keeps showing ads, so
that does not sound like the one. That's not a good intro for me, probably.
yeah. I'm gonna mute the sound, and then we'll see if we could just let it go through the ad this time.
We should just do an over/under on which topic of a lawsuit gets filed first. Like, is it antitrust? Is it the appeal of the judges thing? Is it Title IX? Like, which of the multitude of things technically is filed first? And like, that's the Vegas odds should be on that.
I would put 2-to-1 odds on roster limits. I think roster limits are the one that's going to drive people crazy. It drives the coaches crazy. Ryan Day came out last week and said, hey, you got us playing 17, 18 games in a season now. Might be a little hard when you reduce our roster. We can't just go claim guys off the wire like it's the NFL. So,
right. I actually thought he made a good argument, because at first when I was reading what he said, I was like, why are you crying? Right? Honestly. Because everybody, you have 105 people, but like technically you got kids who are not ready. And I actually thought there was a rational answer to the NFL only has a 53-man roster plus practice squad, and I thought that was pretty good for him.
Yeah, and I mean he's not incorrect. I mean it's easy to say if you're Ohio State, hey, you've got another 4-star kid or another 5-star kid sitting behind the guy who's starting, but for a lot of schools, they don't have that.
Right.
You go out and you coach up a tight end. You've coached him for 3 years, and he's on his senior season, and he's your big star. And suddenly, plants his leg wrong, and he's out for the season.
Absolutely.
But Daniel Gayax is probably right. The correct answer is probably all of the above.
It's true, but technically somebody's going to get the timestamp earliest.
It's true. I think there's probably some locale in Maine that opens up a little bit earlier than everybody else on a Monday. So,
because if you think about Friday when the news came down, even for people who are planning, it was about like 13.7 milliseconds before the college football committee thing was up on Twitter, and they're looking at this person, and he was actually hired, which just means they needed to officially get his paper in. Like, those things happen so fast. So just because they were already ready, the lawsuits from various types are already going to be ready.
Absolutely. And I want to share a little video here. We're going to see how long this lets us play it, guys. because it is an ESPN video, but I think it was very the way Feinbaum did this. So I definitely want to present his program. Also, I want to congratulate Paul Feinbaum. I don't know if anybody caught it. AAA when worlds collide on Saturday. This is Iguana Man, Paul Feinbaum. Congratulations, Paul.
Essentially said college athletes will be paid over my dead body. He's still alive, but the NCAA is dead. It may still be in existence. We're still having tournaments such as the Women's World Series and the men's baseball. But the NCAA, as we know it, is gone. They literally have no jurisdiction whatsoever other than to be tournament directors. And this was supposed to level the playing field. Everybody pays the same into the kitty and then divvies it up. But it will do anything but. The big will get bigger, and the small schools will simply slip away. Other than maybe in basketball-only conferences, they can use all that money for basketball as opposed to like at Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, where they have to split up $20.5 million.
If we get the big getting bigger and the small slipping away, put on your prognostication hat. What will major college sports look like, say, in, I don't know, 10, 15 years?
It will look a little bit like the NCAA basketball tournament this year, where the mid-majors, where we had all those great upsets, the Butlers of the past, and so many incredible stories, the Valpos, they're going to be gone. It's going to be the big schools on top. The rest of the college athletics is going to suffer. And what was really interesting, Jay, I heard Pete Thamel earlier announce that there's going to be a new director of enforcement, so to speak, this ex-Major League Baseball executive who was a former U.S. attorney. Well, good luck for that. The NCAA, whose main goal was to enforce college athletics, could not do it. This person will not be able to do it either, because there will be more litigation. And the real casualty of all this, I believe, is going to be the one part of college athletics that has grown so much. We watched the Women's World Series last night, $1 million pitcher, by the way, for Texas Tech. Women's sports, I think, is going to suffer from this, because if you're at one of these Ohio States or Alabamas and you're divvying up $20.5 million, you know where most of it's going. It's going to football. And that is really a major casualty. And there's also going to be more lawsuits. And this is a big moment, but it's anything but over.
Since you mentioned him, I will name him. MLB executive Brian Seeley, named CEO of the new College Sports Commission late last night. If you could give him one or two pieces of advice as he moves forward, what would you tell him?
Yeah, go to your local CVS and buy the biggest bottle of Advil you can find, because you are going to have more headaches than you've ever had before. And I hate to be a pessimist on a beautiful Saturday morning, Jay, but this sport is not fixable. As soon as this is settled, which of course it was last night, executives are going to Washington to keep pushing Congress to solve their own problems. College athletics did this to themselves, and they're not really suffering for it, because it's $1 billion industry, but it's going to be very uneven in the future. And I think at some point, fans are going to start tuning out, because there is such an existential threat to what we grew up loving and we still do. It's not going to be the same anymore.
So there you have it. Stop screen. According to Paul Feinbaum, college football is irrevocably broken. It is dead. It is done. The College Sports Commission that is going to enforce rules has an impossible task. So why even try? And things are never going to be the same as they were, because college football as a sport has never evolved, apparently. Very interesting.
Well, Feinbaum has never evolved.
Threat. Yeah, well, Feinbaum. Well, he did. He's the Iguana Man from AAA. But yeah, I mean, it's just terrible. But to bring up a point, he brought it up. New York Times reported this morning, Greg Sankey and Pete Bevacqua, the commissioner of the SEC and the athletic director for Notre Dame, are planning on having playing a round of golf with President Trump I believe they said Tuesday, this Tuesday. And I'm certain they're probably going to be key on the agenda is to get House versus NCAA codified and to try to get an antitrust exemption for college football, basically, to, among those things. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. But it seems like they're probably going to be putting the full court press on the legislators to get something done to further protect college football from additional lawsuits. House versus NCAA, they want this to be the end all be all. We've solved it. We've solved it. We've solved it. Now it goes to the legislators. Obviously having the president in your corner will help you get some legislators on board. I'd have to imagine you're probably going to have certain states where it's going to be a bipartisan issue, where, college football is king in a lot of states. So it's going to be an interesting time. And it kind of the point of our show is, where do we go from here? We've spent a year waiting for House versus NCAA, and it's here. And I think it's just gotten even cloudier than it was before.
Look, I think that we just hit the end of the beginning, honestly, right? And I will give Feinbaum credit. I don't usually agree with him, but if I've ever agreed with him, I mostly agree with him with his comments yesterday relative to almost anything I've ever heard him say generally. That wasn't just, trash talking or trolling on a specific team or coach that he's just not down with. In particular, his comment about college basketball, I think, is the one that's the very likely most accurate. It's a different topic for a different day, but if you have 20.5 million, you have 20.5 million. And if you're a school that can somehow do 20.5 million and you don't need to fund your football team because you don't have one, and you're a good school, in college basketball with a named coach, St. John's Gonzaga, they can go crazy. I think he's, he's not completely off base on what he's talking about in terms of things changing and how it's going to impact schools. I think there will be more haves because the schools have the ability to fund things, but there will still be have-nots that get worse. Like, I don't think it's going to be more competitive overall forever, or it's going to be complete disaster on the other side. I think it's going to be somewhere in between where more schools ascend to haves category, but it's not going to prevent some schools from not being able to compete that were at least on the periphery of competing before. But this just, to me, like I said, that lawsuit being settled lays the foundation of 1,000 lawsuits to come on a number of different topics in different courts, different jurisdictions. And look, that's not me hating on, I want this to be solved. I'd like to not talk about it anymore, even though it's fascinating to talk about. We talked about that before. Color me until proven different. Cool. So we're going to do College Sports Commission 2, Electric Boogaloo 2. Like, the sequel wasn't better than the first, and the first never really happened. And I don't really think getting bipartisan agreement on 60 Senate votes on anything right now is extremely likely in the short term, just to put it out there.
No, I don't disagree with you, but I think, you've only got to get 10, 11 senators to come over to do that. So again, obviously the president himself, there's nothing he can do he just can't wave the magic. Just codified. He can't wave the magic. But obviously with Sankey and Bavacqua, I don't think they're going down there just like.
Hey, Mo, and you're definitely cutting in or out. If everyone in the chat could let us know if it's just me or if you guys are having the same problem, just for clarity. But yeah, like, look, I think that Greg Sankey and Bavacqua have to go try, right? All of them have to try. So I'm not telling them not to. I'm just skeptical of what the results will be. I know there's another hearing this week as well in another committee. That'll be, I don't know if it was the 13th or the 19th, but that's one of those numbers somewhere in there is what we've had since NIL began. So we'll just have to see whether any of this comes together in some sort of agreement that helps to make it possible for the lawsuits to eventually stop, right? That's ultimately what the sport needs as a whole.
How's my audio?
You are still a little rough there.
All right. Okay, let me back out and I'll come back.
You're good. You're good now. You're good now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's doing that. It's sometimes might be this microphone, might be the tablet acting up. So if it keeps going on, just let me know and I will flip the audio back on and off.
Absolutely. In the chat, let us know for sure because sometimes it could be me. So having you guys back up if I'm saying it is definitely helpful to Moen.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Got a super chat. Got our first super chat of the evening. By the way, if you want to lend any support to the channel, you can click that little cash icon, become a member, gift a membership, or leave a super chat like our friend Caleb Ramirez has. He basically says more realignment going to happen. We kind of already knew that, Caleb, but this hastens it. This makes it happen a little quicker, probably.
Right.
The ACC teams are going to be looking to get as much money as they can, which you can't fault them. If you're North Carolina, if you're Virginia, if you're Clemson, if you're Florida State, you're Miami, if you're Duke, if you're Georgia Tech, a lot of these schools that could have potential landing spots in the Power 2, you can't really fault them for looking out for their best interests. I mean, I heard what Greg had to say about Georgia Tech a little earlier today, and I thought
I
that
did
was
as well.
interesting. And I think there's probably some in the ACC who don't necessarily want to leave the ACC and don't want to leave some of their ACC sister schools behind. I'm sure, North Carolina probably doesn't want to leave North Carolina State and Wake Forest and Duke and Virginia and possibly Virginia Tech behind. I mean, those are schools I've had a long, long history with. But at the end of the day, this house settlement puts a $21 million hole in your athletic budget. And you need to come up with the revenue to close that hole. I mean, we're talking about, well, what about if basketball schools can pay the full $21 million annually and just invested in basketball programs? There's Power 4 schools out there right now that they're having trouble getting to that 20 million.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the biggest revelation we hear over the next few months, right? Is despite public statements that they are getting to the full vote from the Power 4 across the leagues, there's definitely been breaks within that, right, that we don't know. Some of them have been more public in the Big 12. I question whether some of the ACC schools can truly do it when it's all said and done. And again, we've talked about it a little bit. If Oklahoma has to do layoffs in the SEC and you're Oklahoma, and I know they might not be the richest program out there in the SEC or in the Big Ten, but they're definitely not the poorest program, right? And for them to have to do layoffs in their athletic department to be ready for what's coming of this is a definite canary in the coal mine.
Absolutely. Thank you for the super chat, Caleb. I'll give you a little sound effect if the soundboard wants to work tonight and not play an ad. Let me see here. Well, here, we'll do this. Come on, soundboard.
He's not the best color man in the league for nothing, folks.
Thank you for the super chat, Caleb. Much appreciated. Let's say hello to some people here. We kind of rolled in here and we started talking a little too much, but I want to get to your questions and comments tonight as much as possible. I know everybody's kind of, I don't know, maybe if everybody's shagged out from the weekend, but yeah, it was definitely quite exciting when they drop a news bomb at 6:18 p.m. on a Friday night, Pacific time.
Absolutely.
Capo is here. He says Boomer Sooner and Forks Up. Interesting combination there. Joseph Kurlagon Jr., I believe that college football is heading in a great direction for development of the select college football players that can go into the NFL directly. I want SMU to spend money like the 1980s. Well, you've only got 21 million, and you got to spread that among all your student athletes, or I guess, logistically all your revenue generating college athletes. But you got to keep in
Unless
mind,
those billionaire donors happen to have big invested interest in public companies that can truly take advantage of name, image, and likeness deals for the players.
yeah, we haven't even touched NIL Go yet. But the important thing to remember is some of that 21 million. I think I don't think you can get that from booster funds. That has to come through athletic department funds
Yeah,
that
the
actually come through.
Yeah, the 20.5 million is your revenue derived. Like you can take whatever percentage you want. Like for some schools to get to 20.5 million might not be the 22% average across college football that got us there. Some schools to do 20.5 million, it's going to be 35% of their revenue of media rights deals, ticket sales, merch deals, other ancillary deals. Um, but name, image, and likeness for clarity, because I know it's sometimes confusing. That those dollars, internal collective or external collective, are completely separate from the 20.5. The other part to remember is that if your school is expanding, which are a few schools, Texas A&M now announced that they are, Notre Dame did. If your school is expanding scholarship offers in the short term or the near term, or for the grandfathered student athletes who are impacted by the settlement, that they decided to keep and potentially give a scholarship or to do more sports. About 2.5 million of that comes off the top potentially of the 20.5. So the revenue share portion minus the scholarships and things could bring you down to around 18 million.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a hole here, and we'll talk about it here in a minute. Let me keep rolling in here. Ryan Willie, my Badger brother from another mother. How you doing, Ryan? Good to see you tonight. Hi, CFM. Congratulations. I think that was a linebacker that Fickle brought in for you last week. He was I was watching his highlights. He was pretty good. Pretty good. Daniel Gygax is here, contributor and family member. Hi, everyone. Good to see you, Daniel. Tempest is here. He says, "Hello, crew." Conundrum is here. The Donald J. Trump College Football League. That might be what it takes to get it formed. Bob Swanger's here. Hey, CFM. Good to see you, Bob. Mr. Ed Wayner, good evening. Let's be honest. How many of us are thinking how our boosters going to work around the clearinghouse to keep paying players without limitations? I'm sure that this has already happened. I'm sure there's been new NIL agreements have been formed this past weekend just to predate the NIL Go clearinghouse. So
absolutely.
MBM says boosters they are not going to keep throwing millions and millions at a program without direct return, which they do not get.
Which they've been doing for like 60,000 years, so maybe not at this level. But then again, some programs have billionaires where the money that we think is absorbent is a rounding error for them.
Yeah, I don't ever know what direct return most boosters get anyway, other than, I guess, some bragging rights or... I don't know.
They can't afford to buy an NFL team, right? Or there's not an NFL team for them to buy. So it's like a vacation share ownership of a team.
Yeah, I remember the Troy Smith debacle when he got paid by a booster, and the booster said to his secretary, "Now I own him." And it's like, I don't know what kind of a flex that is that you've paid for a college football player, but what have you? Caleb Ramirez, hi all, good to see you, Caleb. Shonsky's here. Tempest says ACDC. There you go. I'm fine with that too. Hope Deloitte appreciates good art. Yeah, I'm sure that there will be some of that. Soundboard ads, yes. Soundboard ads. Nothing's free anymore. Coach, what time does the federal courthouse open? I believe it's 9 a.m., but there might be a courthouse out there that goes at 8. Notre Dame was stanky at this meeting is ridiculous. Who is going to lock away the princess in her tower? Yeah. Tony Petit, he's not going. Don't know. Larry the GM says it was the school's lawyers that have pushed the limits, not the house lawyers. That's true, but it's the school's coaches that are complaining about it. Roster limits essentially forces out lesser talent. It forces out walk-ons, which is an issue.
It's an issue for some. It's probably an issue for Ohio State. It's not necessarily an issue for as much of an issue for a lot of the private schools because walk-ons aren't, paying private school tuitions as much as they might be able to get away with at state colleges proportionally. Same thing impacted baseball as a thing without the scholarships. So I think there's more people as walk-ons per roster on, the state institutions because you can afford to go to college there if you're not getting money.
Shonsky says, remember the 105 roster is twice the amount an NFL team receives. But again, they have a waiver wire. Somebody gets hurt, they can pick somebody up. They can sign somebody from their practice squad.
If Moen can drop Rock around to pick up Daniel Gygax if he needs to.
Only if the pay is right, Daniel. Get that brown bag ready. Devil Frog's in the house. He says, the College Sports Committee means the death of the NCAA as we knew it. The NCAA still has to give out those tournament credits, so.
The College Sports Committee is only really dealing with a couple of sports, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the enforcement aspect.
Right. The NCAA is still handling the NCAA tournament, which, let's be frank, that's what we know the NCAA for. They're not an enforcement arm anymore. They haven't been an enforcement arm for years.
Yeah. I guess the College Sports Commission could impact other sports here or there, but proportionately, it's not like a lot of the other sports are getting big ass revenue share NIL deals that are going to have to go through the clearinghouse. Maybe they will. Maybe I'm surprised. There's obviously exceptions in every sport. Maybe some school like Stanford will decide to spend big money disproportionate to the revenue to keep, Olympic divers that they know are going to be in the upcoming Olympics, and the value of having them announce as Stanford divers for Team USA a year from now or 4 years from now will make them do a different decision.
Or there could be legitimate business interests that actually would like to have a diver on an NIL deal. Dave's here. How long until the first antitrust case for NIL? Tomorrow morning. MBM. Oh, I like that. You changed your profile picture. That's kind of cool. Paul the Gecko. No, the Iguana Man from AAA. It was on YouTube. Look up AAA on YouTube. It's a Mexican wrestling promotion. Bunch of luchadors, and they have a guy who's an iguana, and he's got an iguana puppet on his hand that wrestled the match with him. So, and he looked just like Paul Feinbaum. Hey, Moen and Rock and Ran, is Florida State going to be stuck in ACC forever?
I personally doubt it. I don't see a way that, even in the worst weird situation, I'm not a big person that believes that a bunch of schools are going to the Big 12 or anything like that. I think there's a world where the ACC splits up into the halves, or the ACC and the Big 12 cause themselves to create a new best of the best. But I still don't really think that's where the end game is for Florida State. I still think they're winding up in the P2.
Yes, and I believe in universal heat death. So forever, not possible. But I will say that the ACC is going to lose some teams here probably in the next 2 to 3 years. And Florida State probably will be one of them, although I don't know how well they're, or how much money they're going to be able to make off of it. Cranky Tiger says Feinbaum makes my skin crawl. Mine too. He isn't wrong. The Habs will have more. Dave's here says the first NIL denial will be the first case. You're probably right, which we probably will get that tomorrow. They go into effect tomorrow. They start having to put things through the NIL Go clearinghouse tomorrow. So I'm sure we'll see. But I'm sure this weekend there were a lot of NIL deals that got completed this weekend for a very specific reason.
Yes. It's called strategery.
Strategery, that's right. Conundrum says Feinbaum's ears weigh 5 pounds each. Pretty close. I always thought it was kind of apropos that he was an Alabama guy. Their mascot's an elephant. He's got gigantic ears. Almighty Finn says Greg Sankey is the J.R. Ewing of college football.
I actually heard they were turning the Dumbo ride at Disney into Feinbaum's ears. It's the same thing. It is an ESPN Disney property.
MBM says, will schools drop sports altogether, phasing them out of the collegiate landscape?
It has already happened, actually. There are a few lower division schools that have already done that. And there's definitely some lower division schools that have dropped sports already.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's necessary evil, though. There was too long, I mean, at the end of the day, student athletes have an opportunity to make more money, and especially student athletes who might not have had an NIL deal. If you're a backup offensive lineman for the UCLA Bruins, you won't have an NIL deal. You're just basically getting your school benefits, which I do believe they still give them the stipend. But as far as, actual money, a lot of athletes still aren't making money, even with the new NIL landscape. So,
I mean, there'll be some exceptions. You could get team-wide deals where they just decide to give everybody an allocation of the team. There have been those kind of deals. Whether those become more standard to make up in any way, shape, or form for the issues, and the star player takes the same share as everybody else because it's just about an equal representation for the team. But those are not going to be, $20,000 a player kind of deals.
Devil Frog says Feinbaum certainly played his part in destabilizing college athletics. I can't disagree with that. The rah-rah for the SEC, putting down other conferences, applauding the Oklahoma-Texas move to the SEC. You can make that argument, Devil Frog. I can't disagree with you. Go Black 45s here. You say, what's everybody complaining about? Just a little golf game among friends. Absolutely. All business deals get settled on the golf course.
They should just do it on a miniature golf course. They should create like a hole for each stupid lawsuit that's about to come, and winning in a playoff on the SEC just means more final hole.
On Friday night, we had this whole debate on the CFB playoff format that continues to go on. Maybe we just do an at-large with a playoff between the commissioners, putt-putt golf playoff between the commissioners, and we televise it.
I mean, that sounds about as rational as half the other things we've had to encounter.
Illini Ted says, not a fan when sports bleeds into politics, and this was a full bloodbath. Yeah, unfortunately, that's what happened. Conundrum says, support labor, player unionization today. That's going to happen too. We've got to figure this out. Are they going to do a collective bargaining agreement? I'm sure they're going to sue for one. Which conference decides to do it first? Which conference decides to volunteer first? We know the Big Ten was talking to Penn State when Penn State wanted to organize those Penn State players. Of course, that was when Kevin Warren was a commissioner, but it's still something that you have to put out there. You're still muted, Rock.
I said all of this stuff is Frankenstein issues because we just won't solve the underlying issue, which is just like collective bargaining with the players. Almost everything we're talking about gets solved.
Yeah,
painfully.
I think eventually we're going to get there. Eventually, but I don't think it's going to be a overnight thing. I think it's going to be a long, arduous battle, and then some conference is going to get the brilliant idea that if we do it first, we're going to get the best recruits. And that conference will do it first, and then everybody will follow suit.
Right. So whatever conference is fighting it the most is the one that is likely going to do it first.
Larry, the GM, brings this up. No basketball school is going to have $20 million. Half of the Big 12 is saying they don't have $20 million.
Sure. Some of them will. I mean, they just will. They can decide to do that. They can decide they want to do that to invest in the thing because they know how much it matters when they have all of that rankings. A school like St. John's in New York, as an example, can probably figure out how to do that because if they have a good enough team, they go from playing half of their games at Alumni Hall for 7,000 people to all of their games at Madison Square Garden, sold out. So I don't think there's a ton of those. I think there are a few of those that could possibly do it. I get your point, Larry, but I do think there are a few exceptions to that.
Yeah, now that the Knicks fired Thibodeau, you're going to need a winning team in New York City to watch. So they definitely can move right into Madison Square Garden. Dave's here says collective bargaining isn't a magic bullet to get what you want. They are organized for the benefits of the players.
They are organized to put yourself into agreed to revenue caps for the owners too, in this case, the universities.
And then maybe we'll have a salary cap moving forward. So, all right, guys, if you're watching us on X, I'm going to go ahead and kill the X feed. Climb on over here to YouTube at the CFB Mafia. You can finish watching us on YouTube for the rest of the evening. I appreciate everybody who's watched us on X so far. Nathan Campbell's in the house. He says, hi, good to see you, Nathan. Glad you could make it. Go Black 45 says, next step is getting the NCAA to give the A4 their 65% voting power in their own division without interference from other leagues. Then the CFP format gets set. Then in 16 months, realignment.
If they can get the first two done by December 1st, right? That's what they need for the 2026. So
I believe the governance thing is happening the 23rd of this month.
The conversation about it?
Yes,
the vote?
yes, yeah. So that could happen as early as this month too.
Wasn't Sankey recently saying that they don't want just 65%?
Well,
they want 100%.
Well, that's Sankey for you, 100% of everything.
He wants 100% of Paul Feinbaum's heart, and he has that.
Pacers about to get this chip. Well, good luck, Pacers. Nothing against Oklahoma City, but I don't know. When I lived in Indianapolis, the Pacers lost one, so I'm pulling for them. Stormy Cyclone says, hey, good to see you, Stormy.
Hello there, Stormy.
Greg Flugar's in the house. I took Silent Tony's spot in the foursome today, and my slice shot of T-box hole number 3 plunked Sankey right in the forehead, and he started speaking in tongue. Good shot.
They probably didn't even hear your shot. It was quiet when you hit the ball because you're Silent Tony.
Silent Tony Petiti. He's silent like the G in lasagna.
He has a silencer even on his even on his golf shot.
You just got to keep living, man. Livin.
Congratulations on the golf game, Greg. Now, if you could just talk to him about, I don't know, making it so that the hammer comes down on Michigan, that would be much appreciated, sir. Thank you for the super chat, Greg. It is always appreciated. We always appreciate you coming in here and dropping us a line. Much appreciated. You spilled too much booze on the mic. Haven't had a drink since Friday. I've had several. Time for private equity to flex. Let's talk about this because I think it needs to be talked about. Private equity. The Big Ten has 4 suitors. The SEC is dealing with Goldman Sachs. We know the Big 12 was involved in it. They have it, quote unquote, on pause. The ACC, we haven't heard anything out of ACC country yet, at least as a conference.
Well, Jim Phillips might wake up next week. It's okay.
He might come out of that coma. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that all 3 of these conferences are looking at private equity. You have to believe these guys are. You have to believe they're at least semi-smart guys, other than Jim Phillips. that understand business. You have to think that this private equity research between these three conferences is a result of House versus NCAA. Maybe looking at that as a means to plug that revenue hole in their athletic departments.
Right, you get that infusion to help you bridge the gap before you figure out how to maximize your revenue so that your budgets don't go down instantly with that hit, right? And then over time, you get your stuff together where you're able to manage that budget better and that hit as your revenues grow wider.
Shonsky says you can't have collective bargaining without antitrust suits. That's why it works for the NFL. Also, the union has nothing to do with the agent, player, and organization creating the contract. You're not wrong, but I think you're probably going to have an antitrust exemption. Conundrum says ACC can burn. Pay your stupid, unequal revenue distribution, morons. Okay. Well, at least you don't pull any punches, Conundrum. That's what I like about you.
The thing is, like, I'm not even sure who Conundrum really doesn't like. Like, what? I don't even know what team. I just know that Conundrum just throws punches.
I think, Conundrum, you're a Hawkeye, right? Conundrum, confirm that in the chat. Ich bin ein Blitzkrieger. I'm confused how much of the $20.5 million goes to compensate former athletes versus current athletes. 0. That is all taken from the NCAA credits, the NCAA tournament credits. And I believe that's a several $billion total payout that goes to pay those back athletes.
And that's the crux of one of the lawsuits, is that the $20.5 million is a go forward that applies to a class of athletes who are currently enrolled, right? That are and they've had a year or more expired, but the class of 2026 recruits who are coming in for whatever sport it might be are being held to a revenue cap in theory that they had no representation in. Hence why one series of lawsuits will likely come as well.
Absolutely. $2.8 billion. And I can tell you if House versus NCAA did not pass, that number was going to be much, much, much higher. So they desperately needed this to pass. Now they need to get it codified. Notre Dame is the J.R. Ewing of college football, and Greg Sankey is the Bobby Ewing of college football. Fair enough.
So is Greg Sankey dreaming away the next season or last season?
You know, I never got into Dallas, so
just Google it.
Yeah,
if there's a jump the, you know, Happy Days. If you heard of the jump the shark moment, they're like probably the second or third most common referred to old school thing would be that reference. Just Google it. Ask ChatGPT. If you don't like how something goes, you just act like the whole thing didn't never happen. Is basically the point, and you start over again.
Sounds like a plan. I pretend the last season of Game of Thrones didn't happen. It's wild that an institution like OU with a nearly $2 billion endowment is so mismanaged that they are having to lay off employees.
That is wild. I think it's one of the wildest, most overlooked stories that we've heard recently. And that was before I even knew that they had a $2 billion endowment. I assumed they had a good endowment, but I hadn't done the research. I was just basing it off of being Oklahoma state institution, national title history in the SEC, definitely not, top of the former Big 12, at least the middle of the SEC in theory on paper. And then you add that they also have a $2 billion endowment. That's just makes it even more interesting for what's really going to happen to other schools. Or maybe they're just really mismanaged and we just not aware of that story, which is also possible.
The reason the Notre Dame AD is there is because he was friends with Trump when Trump did The Apprentice for NBC. He was an executive there. Well, that's why you bring him. That's your in. Moen, you only get $21 million at Ohio State. Yeah, except the problem, Shonsky, is the NIL deals are they're going to be put through. We have a lot of insurance companies in Ohio, Nationwide, Progressive, and those insurance companies love college football.
Well, the other thing it does too, potentially, right? Like for the first couple of years of NIL, after like maybe the first year, like so the second or third years, there was this whole thing about how it's, nobody cares about whether you have like a water park slide in your facilities because it's all about the money. But if the money on some portion is equal in theory, NIL aside, and not every player is going to, you know, the third best lineman you recruit is probably not getting mega NIL deals. The facilities race could come back and play again. Like how nice is the place that you're going to spend your time? So then if you're Ohio State, and yes, you're giving up only 20.5 million, but that's probably not 22% of Ohio State's revenue sources for this, right? They're probably, you guys could be 10 or 15% of all of your revenue sources based off of how big your programs are and how much money the football program generates, but whatever it is, you have other cash flow that you could use in other ways to enhance your program that isn't a direct payment to a player in a world where others won't be able to do that because they have to maximize their revenue payouts just to get to where they need to keep competitive to attract talent.
What percentage of the 2.8 billion settlement goes to former athletes? All of it. 100%. And then
it's just paid out over 10 years or something like that.
It's a trust. Who's paying 50% of the 20.5 million to the women? Great question. Title IX, that's going to come up.
That's the question, right? Is it a Title IX thing, or is it purely for some, in some eyes, these are the things, the revenue comes in, it's allocated this way based off of these metrics, ticket sales, what have you, and that's what happens, right? And some might say that that's not fair, and I understand that as well, but others will sit there and go, well, the NBA makes X and the WNBA does Y as a different example. And that's a question I don't think any of us know what really is going to happen. And it's also possibly a question that could give us an answer for the next 3 years and could be an answer that changes in 4 years, depending upon how things happen with government enforcement and interpretation of things like Title IX.
Well, one thing remains undefeated in all of this, and that is billable hours. So I'm sure we're going to get to the bottom of that in some courtroom somewhere. Morris Simmons is joining us. He says, hello, everyone. Go Noles 2027. So he's calling it shot. He's saying 2027. Then who's paying current players? Depends on the player. Pretty soon the universities will be. The university's athletic department will be paying players. Currently, there are several that have NIL deals. Whether they're legitimate NIL deals, to be determined. Starting tomorrow, there is a new clearinghouse by Deloitte called NIL Go, which will now clear and approve all NIL deals moving forward. But it will not break any NIL deals previously instituted. So,
and not every school is bringing their NIL in house though. So,
all right.
And Arch Manning, as probably a really good example, will be getting paid by Texas. Whatever form of their collective will probably have some deals that get added to whatever he might have done, and somebody, whether it's whoever, Nike, Pepsi, Coke, is just going to call his agent and do a direct deal, and they'll throw that to the clearinghouse, or say we shouldn't have to give this to the clearinghouse. We're a private company. Why do we need to share our proprietary deal with anybody? And that could be another lawsuit.
Shonsky brings up teams that can market their players and brand the best will thrive in the NIL market. But that's just a statement, Shonsky. That's absolutely right. That's one thing Paul Feinbaum did get right. The haves will have more. Devil Frog says, yep, no more walk-ons. Players are now employees. Well, they're technically not employees.
They're not even really remotely. They're closer to being independent contractors than employees.
Right. A lot of public universities, if you're an employee, it feeds into the public employees retirement fund and all that stuff. And that's just something they really don't want to do. They want to avoid at all possible making them employees.
I think it really comes down to no one wants to have any players for some reason be able to go into their benefit site and get free movie tickets or $5 movie tickets. That part of the benefits package that almost nobody ever goes to. They just don't want them to happen.
Jeff Fish said Washington is staying at 85 scholarships and keeping the walk-on program so the players get a little more money.
Wasn't the SEC, didn't they originally announce, and I don't know what has changed now with the grandfathering, didn't Greg Sankey say they were staying at 85 scholarships, at least for the upcoming season? Do you know if that changed? Does anybody in the chat? Because that's the last time I heard it. Again, that was probably before the whole, like, are they going to grandfather roster spots kind of conversation and designated student athletes.
Morris Simmons brings it up again. Private equity is pushing hard to get in college football. Let me ask you a question, Rock. You're a Miami fan. We haven't heard anything out of the ACC seeking private equity. Would you be opposed as a fan? Just as well, you're an alumni too. You're an alumni. You're a fan. Would you be opposed to the president or the athletic director from Miami going out and looking for a private equity deal for just Miami?
I could care less. Like, whatever they need to do to get money, it's the billionaire's checks, not mine. It's not like, hey, if things don't go well with that deal, that all of a sudden the School of Communication is going to be owned by, Schwab. So it's capital funding, which means there's a risk for the investor as well. It's, I think because it's coming from people who could theoretically take control of a company and liquidate it if they wanted to in other ventures. People have this take that it could, destroy the university somehow. Like, it's not going to destroy a state institution remotely, and it's extremely unlikely that a private institution that's nonprofit is going to be structured, get private capital infusion that somehow means that the Miami baseball stadium gets taken away if something doesn't work. So I think you just got to be smart about how you do it. It's basically a loan. You're leveraging successes, and Lord knows the Miami marketing department and licensing team could use a freaking infusion of something.
Well, you bring up a great point, but I'd add that there's also things you can sell through private equity, trademarks,
right?
Rights to, like, say, you wanted to make a meme coin or a cryptocurrency. You could actually sell the rights to that cryptocurrency to a private equity firm to create that. Lots of things out there that are non-traditional things that they could sell rights to trademark for, or copyright for.
Let's just hope that nobody does a meme coin, but I think that somebody probably will.
It's going to happen. It just make your peace with that Kane coin.
Sponsored by Hawktua Girl.
Yeah, make your peace with the Kane coin. Let's see. They are PE. Yeah, Morris Simmons. You got to bring it up. Drew Weatherford. Drew Weatherford owns a PE company. So, who's to say Florida State's not out there talking to Drew and seeing what Drew can do for them? Dave's here says nothing good ever comes from private equity. Blitzkrieger says he attends Wheaton, a D3 college, so I don't have to worry about this silliness. It's crazy.
No lies detected there.
Well, you might know the answer to this question. Isn't tuition at UCLA $60,000 to $70,000 a year? How can people argue players don't get paid?
Well, I don't think people argue players don't get paid, or some might do, but I don't argue that. I argue state tuition for that is a lot lower, right? So it depends upon if you're in state or not. But out of state, yeah, when you're a top 10 university or top 15 university, their tuition out of state is pretty expensive. The argument to me that do they get paid with former scholarships? Yes. So does an amazing violin player who gets a full ride to the music department, or someone who cranks on their SATs. Most of them are not then concurrently driving revenue for the school in the millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, or supporting something of that entity. Yes, for sure. Sometimes you can give a brilliant student undergrad wise comes in, and while they're there working on a project, they could, come up with something that creates a startup. That's a big reason why Stanford has a ton of money, right? Is what happens with students in there, and they're investing in all the types of things that starting businesses or having a venture fund to support those kind of programs. If you're a grad student, it's a little bit different. Maybe you're going to come up with a big scientific breakthrough. But the average student who gets a full ride in college does not help to then carry on a multi-$100 million industry. So yes, I think they get paid when they're getting a scholarship, but I got a scholarship to Miami and I didn't earn a crap for them until I was like years out later and donated.
Shonsky says, speaking of golf, I ripped off my first 80 yesterday. Congratulations.
That's a good front nine, man. Good front nine.
I hit my first 80. I told those guys I'll see you back at the clubhouse, and I left them on the fourth hole. Conundrum says Big Ten with the Teamsters.
That should be the Big 12 conference, don't you think? Like, that's
well,
like a good,
we don't know where Jimmy Hoff is buried, so wherever Jimmy Hoff is buried,
whatever concrete he's under, they get the endorsement deal.
Well, yeah, whatever stadium he is in the foundation of gets the endorsement of the Teamsters.
I guess the Jets.
Minus the Big commissioner, Big will screw up the realignment by waiting on Notre Dame and UNC. They should grab Florida State and Miami.
I agree with Morris Simmons. But take Notre Dame too, because that would make it more fun.
Tempest says, I can hit the ball from a tee and putt, but God forbid if the ball goes into the sand pit. Jeff Fuller's here. He says, good evening, y'all. Good evening, Jeff. Hope you're enjoying your weekend.
Jeff published one of the more interesting things I'd seen. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Mo.
Nope, that's fine.
Jeff had published something about the revenue from schools. Granted, it's a year older, but there were some interesting orders of teams on there that I wasn't expecting from that post. Granted, again, it's an academic year in the past, but it was an interesting ranking of the revenue athletic departments were bringing in.
Tempest says Knicks are the new Rangers. Yeah, I didn't understand that one myself. The Knicks have sucked for so long. They've got a coach that has them winning, has them in the playoffs, and they fire him.
Have you heard of James Dolan? And I hate the Rangers. Knicks are more universal. I was an Islanders fan growing up.
Yeah, I never understood it, but I was thinking, Tony, I was thinking along the same line. NFL doesn't pay for their college education, food, living quarters. Yeah, I mean, if someday that kid who's a second-year poli-sci major starts generating $1 million in revenue for a university, they might get their own revenue share.
For most of these universities, the proportion of full scholarships they give out for athletic departments is pales in comparison to the academic scholarships they give out for a lot of students through either state-related programs or their own programs, of which there is no requirement for their additional time other than to keep their grades up, just like football players have to do. So I don't really think it's as clean an argument.
Conundrum says Brian Seeley is at Petiti's house tonight for dinner and cocktails. Of course,
he's definitely not hanging out with Jim Phillips.
Brian Seeley is the new head of the college sports committee, former MLB executive.
He's a cop, right? He's a DA cop. Like, that's what he did. I don't think that guy's ever going to be involved in anything related to a, Super League media deal. He's a chief. He's more like the head of the FBI for college football.
John Nelson says college football just wants more money to buy TP for their bumhole. Let me see. I don't know if I've got. There we go.
Let's go get drunk.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a butthead kind of thing to say.
That is a direct quote from Beavis and Butthead. Still the Big Ten, I'm hearing. Morris, you might want to go watch my show from Thursday night. Some bad stuff happened this week that might have dinged Florida State Seminoles. So either Larry is lying or he's spreading misinformation. All Big 12 schools have the $20 million.
I don't know that Larry is trying to do either of those, and I don't know that you're wrong, Devil Frog. so someone can correct me. I was under the impression that we were hearing some concerns about all of this from like the Iowa State athletic director, as an example. I don't know if that's specifically related to finances and the 20.5 million, or just the larger issues of college sports and money. So I don't remember what that was. Do you, Moen? Or does anybody in the
I
chat?
don't. Nobody has to claim what they're doing. I eventually through filings, I'm sure we'll find out, but I don't think anybody has to claim right away that, hey, we're on board giving 20.5 million. It just,
Right. I would assume that the state institutions, I know some people have passed laws that they don't have to reveal what they're paying a specific player, or some schools have said they're not going to do that. But I think you would, as a state institution, have to say we did pay 20.5 million or 18 million less, after scholarships to the revenue sharing from our athletic department, just in terms of state budgetary, transparency laws, unless somebody absolves them from reporting that. In the meantime, it behooves every school to say that they're doing the top revenue share, right? Because if nobody else can prove that you're not, you can't, other than on an individual player who's getting specific offer from different schools. It's hard to sit there and say that you're not, and it could just be that school A valued you less than school B. In reality, maybe they literally valued you less, or they had less to give you in your value for you.
Absolutely. And look at this. Our friend MBM has gifted five memberships to the College Football Mafia community because he's a pimp.
You know what I'm saying?
And he is out here. We're going to play a little Oklahoma State fight song for the man. And we're going to play a little They Live Bubblegum.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Late, great Roddy Piper. And I'm going to have a double or a triple for you. Thank you for that 5 gifted memberships, MBM. If you received one of those 5 gifted memberships, I don't have my YouTube window up, so I don't know who got them. But if you received one of those 5 gifted memberships from our friend MBM, make sure you say thanks to him in the chat. If you're watching us on demand or listening to us on podcast, on YouTube Music, go ahead and leave it in the comments section. I'm sure MBM would appreciate it. We appreciate it, MBM. We appreciate your generosity so much. And can't thank you enough. And Go Black 45 says, ISU said that it's becoming harder for the AD department to make those payments. Has no idea where that extra money will come from. I take it that's in reference to what you were...
Yeah, my question back to the debate there in the chat between what a couple of people said. I remember hearing him say something like that. I just didn't know if I was botching the particulars and if it was a indication of whether they would or would not be doing 20.5 million, whether it's publicly revealed, has to be revealed, hidden. That was essentially what I was remembering.
All right. Secret Agent, Hidden Hawaiian, Jeff Watson, Mr. SEC, Matt Higgins were all gifted memberships by MBM. If you're one of those 5 people, make sure you thank MBM in the chat. It is much appreciated that he gifted those memberships, and we thank him tremendously. All right. Morris Simmons has renewed his membership. Congratulations, Morris. Thank you for renewing your membership to the College Football Mafia. We appreciate you. Love having you as a member. We will have a members-only stream coming up at some point this month. We don't know when it is yet because we had to change it after this news broke on Friday. So thank you, House versus NCAA. You made us have to change everything. Stormy Cyclone says you hit what you aimed for, Greg. Congrats. And then Conundrum said, did Flugar get a ruling from the little general on how to play the next shot? Well, Sankey was still on the ground. You put the T in his mouth and you swing away, Merrill. Swing away.
Put a little extra cheese on it.
There you go. Mowing drinks in the morning, noon, and night. Gotta love them shower beers. Here's a pro tip. You'll never get a hangover if you never stop drinking. There is zero talk about staying in the ACC. Morris Simmons, you've got to remember the clandestine phone call, my friend. The clandestine phone call between Big 12 and ACC member schools that did not involve the commissioners of the Big 12 and the ACC. We don't know what it is. It's clandestine. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Big 12 resumes talks. I'm probably about private equity. Here's the thing that I was talking to Greg about this earlier today. The thing that gets me is this was put on pause because there's teams in the Big 12 who believe, whether it's valid or not, that they have an opportunity to get into the Big 10 or the SEC, or they believe they have an opportunity. They believe they have an opportunity somewhere down the road to get into the Big 10 or the SEC. And they don't want to get locked into a private equity deal because of that. If I'm anyone in the Big 12, I'm like, you hate to shoot a kid's dream down, but, maybe you're not going to be the first kid to, land on Neptune.
Well, let's just play that out for a second. Do we assume that some people? I guess it depends upon if you want to assume the average administrator is self-aware and maybe smart, or if you assume that they're dumb, right? So, is it that some schools think that, hey, I'm not number one or two, but I've been told or have heard through good sources that ultimately the end game for for the Big Ten is 24 teams? Because if they have any inkling that's the case, then I would understand. The flip side of that is timeline, right? You don't have to do a private equity deal that ties your rights up and things for a decade. You could do a shorter term deal that maybe matches your timeline of when you think your aspirations can meet. Or are they just completely clueless about where they really stand in the pecking order, and there's some alumni and boosters in their ear saying, no, you got to go to the Big Ten. It's going to happen because we love ourselves and we're great. And they might also be great, but still not have a home.
Here's the thing, though. I would have to believe they would pursue forward if they had a 75% vote. If 12 out of the 16 schools said, yes, let's pursue private equity, it would not be on the list right now. I don't see, and I'm sorry, Big 12, I don't see 4 schools in the Big 12 that can make it into the Big 10 or the SEC.
Well, that's assuming that those are the only 2 things that they have had conversations with.
True.
What if there are more?
True.
There could be 4 schools or 6 schools who think that there's going to be a third option, and the third option is not going to be the Big 12 taking 2 or 3 or 4 schools from the ACC when the ACC implodes. There could be schools who realize that the best thing for all of us selfishly, not for the sport or the conference, if things are going to go to a third conference, is to get the best, most valuable brands and raise the floor and reduce the gap in the ceiling. And there's a bunch of those teams that think that they might wind up being with whoever, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina, Big Ten and SEC don't do anything. The best of the 2 best, as opposed to a merger or a poaching of 3 teams. That could be the other thing that they're thinking about, and maybe those were the teams that were represented at the private equity meeting.
Yeah, you might be right. It might be that clandestine meeting, but
I'm just conjecturing. I have no inside things. It's just game theory, throwing out scenarios, because what else do we have to do but guess, because we don't know.
Nope, absolute speculation. Shonsky says the private equity talks are all about the Super League. I can tell you they are not, Shonsky. The Big Ten's private equity talks are about the Big Ten. And the SEC's private equity talks are about the SEC. So, Morris Simmons says, I'm hearing of a plan B that is in the left field. Okay.
Morris, if I just mentioned your plan B, just blink twice.
Let's see. Conundrum says, go Hawks.
Question answered.
Pit Snipe Husker. Don't think I've seen you around here before, Pit Snipe. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Give us a like and a subscribe if you would, sir. The NCAA is paying the past athletes for money they are taking from the basketball tournament. Yes, it's NCAA tournament credits. Because they just don't have that coin sitting on hand.
Only Stanford has that coin sitting on hand.
Yeah. The NCAA just doesn't have $2.8 billion laying around in their change drawer. Has anyone in the college football mafia done an analysis on the new ACC cash distribution off last year's numbers? I can bring that up to you and see, Stormy. It's going to be hard. It was a rough year last year for Florida State.
But they would still have the 4-year blended average, right? Because it's a 5-year rolling plan on the media portion of it.
Yeah, we might have to do that, go back, but we have to. I would go back like 5 years and say, what are the numbers for 5 years? And then base it off of that. This settlement just drew the line between the haves and have-nots. I think Nebraska will be fine, but who knows? Morris Simmons says he's not staying in the ACC. Trust me on that. I guess that's your blink twice. What's the ACC? Is that still a thing?
For now, it's on its way to the ABC conference, as I've said. It will lose a C and go down to a B, but we're not there yet.
Absolutely. Guys, we're going to be on here for about another 10, 15 minutes. Any comments you absolutely want to get read will have to be super chats. Otherwise, we're going to proceed through here. As always, we tend to give preferential treatment to our members' comments. Like Tempest, yeah, they changed the name from the Atlantic Coast to All Coast Conference. They absolutely did. I read an article the other day where they were talking about ACC teams, and an ACC coach said that taking Cal into the conference was the absolute dumbest thing he'd ever seen the ACC do.
Yeah, that was in the Athlon article. I think they said it was. Well, there was no, if not, there was another quote in the Athlon article that Cal is a very bad fit for the ACC, purely on the football field. But Cal is actually, as an aside, Cal is doing really well in recruiting this year.
Well, that's the thing, too. They said because, you've got the boosters are pushing for Ron Rivera to essentially run the football team. And Justin Wilcox, they said Justin Wilcox is such a fantastic coach on defense to leave Cal and just become a defensive coordinator somewhere else.
Somewhere they got a kumbaya moment because you're not performing in the recruiting rankings. Even, it's June, nothing's till signing day. I understand all of that. But you're not getting there. You're not in the top 25 from like 70 last year without having some infusion of cash and NIL to get you there. Even if we've heard that all the boosters were withholding stuff over this power struggle. Either something that's settled or something weird is happening. Well, good for Cal.
Yeah. Dave's here says, so let me get this right. They limit how much a school can spend, but don't limit how much you have to spend. As a hell of a deal for the employer if you can get it. Yeah, it's different from the NFL in that regards because they don't have not all schools have the same resources the way NFL teams do.
Yeah, it's great. You can totally pay a player $30 an hour, but it's also okay if you only pay them $4.
As long as you're getting paid something. Morris Simmons says he's waiting for further information. It would be a shocker. Okay, well, Morris, we're here when you come up with it, man. Drop in here and let us know. Just tell
us it's not coming from genetics or whoever that other dude is on the board. Regal, no. If it's from somebody else, I'm dying to hear. And that's no hate. I want Miami and Florida State to go together. So I'm not wishing anything bad for realignment for Florida State, just to be really clear.
Schools in the Big 12, Big 10, and SEC have all confirmed that they will pay out the full $20+ million revenue share each season. I see that's a quote, Double Frog, but is it all schools in the Big 12, all schools in the Big 10, and all schools in the SEC?
I confirmed yesterday that I would vacuum the carpets.
I'm just saying that quote can be read. I can see where you're saying it appears that way, but unless it says all schools in the Big 12.
Correct. I understand your interpretation of that as well, Moen.
They are all legit NIL deals until proven otherwise in court. Yes, we know that's going to happen.
If you're really smart, you want to play around with the system, whatever company or booster you are, you start paying non-sports influencers the rate you paid them in the same market for something else to give a comp and game the system and see if it works. I don't know if it will work because it still might not fly, but you can have a plausible case of like, well, I paid, this influencer who has, 50,000 followers, of which 25,000 are in Florida, this amount of money. Why can't I pay this player to do the same thing?
The borders just got set. Financial arrangements are more solid than before realignment go. Not yet. Arch Manning gets almost all of his NIL deals that are straight commercial endorsement deals that Texas has nothing to do with. Ewers took 0 from Texas NIL.
Totally makes sense, Larry, the GM. And if I was a company, and I have done these deals before with talent, they're generally under NDAs. And I wouldn't want, as a private company, doing a deal for an endorsement, advertising. I don't want some other company to decide or even see my deals, period, because people are supposed to be sworn to secrecy, and that never happens. Somebody works somewhere one day, a year later they quit, things leak out. I think there's going to be a big company. It's like, why does my stuff have to go to some clearinghouse because of a lawsuit that I had nothing to do with as a company?
Pit Snipe Husker says, I wake up next to a handle of vodka. There's been times where a handle of vodkas make me wake up to something unpleasant. So, please drink responsibly, everyone. Don in Kansas says, hello, everyone. Busy news week. It's going to get busier. Don. Tomorrow, 9:30 a.m., the lawsuits are going to be rolling in. ISU is the perfect case study for how this new world will look.
You know what tomorrow is? This is how messed up college football is. I just thought of it. Remember when signing day early morning meant something, right? And the offers started getting sent in. Tomorrow we might be like, well, the first lawsuit's in the state of Kansas. It's coming from this. Or Darren Heitner has now sued on behalf of his client. And we'll just have On3 and everybody doing a live show from having different lawyers tell us who signed their lawsuit.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I was watching Hayes Fawcett. He dropped a Buckeye nut today, and then I had to wait for 3 hours for Ohio State to make the announcement. I mean, that's what it's come down to. It's refreshing to see after Hayes Fawcett makes, his little emote preview.
He should do lawsuit, commitments. He really should. At least it would make it interesting, and it'd be visually interesting.
You see all these official visit photos the kids take. We need to get official visit photos for attorneys. If Oregon thinks they can get more money from KU and others moving to the P2 later, they won't step on that. I'm not quite sure if or think they can get more money from KU and others moving to Power 2 later, they won't step on that. I'm not sure I followed that Go Black 45. I'm confused. Is Greg so skilled that he can banana slice a driver and peel Sankey in the forehead at will, or was it an errant shot that accidentally injured someone? Anytime Greg Sankey gets hit in the head with balls, it's not an accident.
No comment.
PE Talks for Everyone is now about absorbing the House settlement price tag of $10 billion. We'll see. Got to be overturned. I don't think the idea of a third league of the biggest ACC Big 12 is a bad idea. That conference wouldn't be so far behind the P2. Sun Devil, I made a video about this last week. It's tough. It's tough. You go in there and try and find 8 teams from the Big 12 and 8 teams for the ACC, and you'll start noticing you're leaving people out, and it's tough. How do you square it when one public school gives women 50% of the $20.5 million and another public school gives women 5% of the money? Well, if you're a woman athlete, you're probably going to that school that's given 50%. In fact, I'd guarantee it. You're trying to get a scholarship to that school.
Yeah, I mean, in absence of there being clear definitions, you might see some school that decides to like go all in on the future of women's sports and the sports that are really growing, women's basketball, softball, and volleyball, right? Like, it's possible.
Pit Snipe Husker says, throw the bones. That's right. Throw the bones at, I don't think I have any bones things, but let's do a little Scarface. If it'll play.
This country, you got to make the money first. Then when you get the money, you get the power.
Right. Get the money, you get the power. Then you get the khakis. Tempest says ACC should have added Oregon State and Washington State. No, Tempest. The ACC should have listened to North Carolina, Florida State, and Miami, and not added SMU, Stanford, and California.
Well, it's Clemson. We can't give Miami credit for a vote that they actually went along with.
Well, that's true. I forgot. Miami did go along with that.
See,
Clemson, North
I
Carolina.
might be biased, but I try to be honest about it.
Sorry, Clemson. I apologize. Clemson, please accept my sincere apologies. Stanford, I don't mind, but we, Florida State, didn't want them. Almighty Finn says, I'm out of here. Catch y'all next time. See you, Finn. Take it easy, brother. Smoke a bone for me. FSU and Miami to the Big. I'm so excited for it. Maybe? Lawyers suck till you need one. I can't say any comment on that one.
Yeah, I don't have any argument on that.
Absolutely. Well, we're about at an hour and 20 minutes here, so we're probably going to wrap it up. With this one, Almighty Finn says, hey, Moen, I found some weed in my closet from 7 years ago. I'm saved some for you. No, thank you. I'd prefer not to cough my lungs out. You can bake it into an edible, make some oil out of it. I might do that, but no desire on the 7-year-old cannabis there, bud. But I appreciate the offer, Finn. I do appreciate the offer.
It should be easy to light.
You're right. Probably go up in a second.
Look at it with your eyes for too long.
Be like a wick. Caleb Ramirez, Greg Flugar, MBM gifting the 5 college football mafia memberships. Thank you, MBM. Morris Simmons re-upping his membership. Thank you, Morris Simmons. As far as shows this week, we might have a show Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll see how I'm feeling and what's happening. Nate will be back on Thursday from his vacation. He is going to do a consigliere show with a bunch of lawyers. So whoever was saying they lawyers suck until you need one, you're going to have several of them on Thursday night. So please take care and watch that show. And tonight we got asked on Friday about what happened to the Tarleton Turtle. There is the Tarleton Turtle. He is reminding you that Tarletons are turtly smooth. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Everybody have a safe week, and peace out until we meet again.